Chris, I'd like to thank you for a lot of the dialogue you provided today. And at this stage, what I'm going to propose is if there are questions and you're prepared to type them on the chat section, we can entertain those. Certainly want to be able to take advantage of the fact that Chris is here online today and more than happy to sort of provide any detail regarding our solution, specifically for the MAS90-200 environment. So I'll sort of open it now to see if people would like to pose questions through the chat forum. And if you'd like to have me unmute you and you'd like to talk to Chris directly, you can pass on information. I can certainly address Jim's question. We can certainly put you in contact with Chris.
Oh yeah, not a problem. Feel free to share my email with anyone who wants. If you want, you can even share my my phone contact information. Allow them to contact me directly at my office. That wouldn't be a problem at all.
Okay, I appreciate that, Chris. Thank you very much. So if you'd like to ask a question to Chris directly, I'm more than happy to unmute you. You just have to indicate via the chat section. I'm glad to see it's actually functioning. I've just had a question posed to me by one participant. So,
well, I'm not seeing that come up on my side.
Actually, Jeff, did you? What I'm going to do is I can unmute you, and maybe you can pose that question directly. Hello, Jeff. Can you?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I can hear you.
Jeff's question, Chris, is did you consider more than one other EDI solution provider?
Yes, we did. We actually went to a couple. MAS90 actually has two that are actually one that they recommend. I believe they're called True Commerce, and that's their recommended EDI people that they team up with. There's actually a host of them. We actually went through one for our EDI developer called Business to Business EDI, and he does integrated modules into MAS that work similarly. SPS Commerce was another one that we had looked at. And basically the biggest factor was, one, particularly our company, I don't know if it's the same for yours, we prefer not to use custom programming in our MAS90 because when it becomes time to roll up to newer versions of MAS, sometimes you'll have to have your developer or this third-party developer reprogram the module because it might not be compatible with newer versions of MAS90. For example, when we were on version 4.2 of MAS, the database was using the old Sage database, I believe it was called Business Intact, and then they rolled up to a SQL database. So the programming for our old EDI system basically became worthless at that point, and we actually had to pay to have them reprogrammed. So that was literally thousands of dollars. So what we liked about the Edisoft program was what they had advertised is within 90 days, I believe that's right, Kelvin, 90 days? Within 90 days of a release of a MAS90 version, they are compatible. And it's an external program. So now I can have this program, say, on a warehouse unit that I don't want my MAS90 ERP in, or I don't want a particular users roaming around the MAS system. I can just have them use this program. So that was one of the benefits that we saw with them when we were looking at it, was the fact that it did not require any programming into our MAS, which we had concerns in the past for causing certain issues that we had seen with our MAS90 with GLs and module differentials, differences between MAS90 and GL module.
Jeff, was that a good response to your question?
That was an excellent response. I appreciate the information.
That's great.
Yeah,
I'm just
and just as reference, you always want to look at basically the services that they're going to offer you. Make sure that when you look, if you're going to look at 3 different vendors or 4 different vendors, and make sure that they're comparing apples to apples, because sometimes what they'll do is they'll say, oh, well, that's part of this program, but that's not included in this. They're going to try to quote out different parts because a lot of times software developers, they try to put certain costs in certain fields, or they're trying to put certain programming aspects that they don't want you to see. And then the other part is how they design your actual templates or your actual EDI documents. Like Edisoft uses templates. Other ones use actual custom programming to design your the segments for your EDI. So you want to compare that too to see how they're actually developing it, because that's going to come into a cost structure for you later too when you have to add new EDI partners to your system.
Chris, I appreciate that. I've got another question here from another gentleman, Jim. How long did it take to install and implement Edisoft? And could you give us an idea from start to finish plus time to train your staff? And I'm going to just put Jim on the line as well.
Okay. Well, what was great about the Edisoft program was basically the time to implement and install. What happened was we started basically, I believe it took an overall total of about 2 months. And that was to program 10 individual training partners. Now that's pretty quick because beforehand when we did it with our last customer, our last EDI provider, it took 6 months to do less than that. We only programmed about 5. And the great benefit of that is we were actively trading with our customers at that time too. So what happened was we prioritized certain trading partners to be up and running. So basically we started on the project implementation program where we sat down and we talked to them about what was needed from us and what was needed from them. And we went through the process. So basically we had to get all of our trading partner guides, which we already had, and then basically allow their implementation specialists access to our database where they can access the MAS90 database directly to add basically this trading partner information, because they use, you'll hear a lot from your MAS90 reseller, the visual integrator program that they use to upload, say, like crystal reports or new data into MAS. They use another version of that called object-oriented interface, which is another portal that allows MAS updates. So essentially, the implementation was all done by them in that 2 months. I participated a very small amount, other than basically answering questions about documents, processes. That 2 months was all Edisoft. Basically, they were basically working X amount of hours a day to get that system up. So for you,
Chris,
it's a great...
If I can interrupt here for a moment, Jim, is that a pretty good answer to your question? Hi, Jim. Just want to make sure that was a satisfactory answer. Jim's also interested in knowing how long it takes to train.
The training is actually extremely fast. I believe we had basically a 1 to 2 hour sit-down meeting with all the people involved, and we went through basically the real simple process. It's a real simple process. I mean, I can explain to you over the phone. I mean, you push one button, you push another, and it goes pretty quickly. And since it's all visual, you can basically associate images to the process, so you know exactly what you're going to be pushing. So about 1 to 2 hours is what it took to get the fundamentals up and running. There was some specialized training that had to go on later for basically more complex customers. You know, certain fields have to be filled in. But that was, again, no more than another hour worth of training for that particular person. It's a real straightforward process. It's not too difficult at all. I mean, you could take someone who's a complete novice in this setup, and they can be basically running the program on their own within a couple of hours. That's exactly how we did it. We were trading actively, so we had to get it up and running extremely quickly. So we had that 2-hour training session, and we were training documents immediately on our own without assistance.
Because we're kind of a little bit tight on time, I don't want to stretch it too far, but I have a couple of more questions. One is also from Jeff again. He's interested in knowing how did pricing compare with our competitors.
You guys were, you know, I kind of hate to say it during the meeting, you guys were a little higher than 2 of them, but the 2 that we were getting, basically, they were small-time operations where it was basically one gentleman running the operation, basically what it sounded like out of his house, and then the other provider basically had a lot of additional monthly fees. They had administration fees that weren't part of the software purchase. Once you got the software from Edisoft, it was pretty much a comparative maintenance fee schedule and a comparative fee schedule. The business-to-business and the SPS had additional fees and services that they charged you on a per-month basis, and they typically charged me a higher per-character rate for my van usage. So when you compare them together, pretty much they netted out almost equal. For Edisoft, it was more for the software that you paid more for, but your fees and maintenance were much lower. They were much more comparative at that point. So once you got the software cost out of the way,